All right. I'm going to have to cut the conversation short, so I know hopefully that was a good way for y'all to get started. And again, I can't, just looking out into this room and seeing this many folks gathered here, it's really beyond words. So my name's Eric Blumenthal. I wanted to get us started, and before I bring Mike up, just share a couple things. I want to start with gratitude. So first, look, there's a couple guys that I need to call out: Zach Fisher, Mike Wynn, Mike Lynch, C.A. Phillips. I came a couple months ago up the hill. We sat in a conference room and we talked about this, and these guys have a ton going on. There's a ton going on in the life of Northstar, and it would have been very easy to say, hey, let's do that in 2024, or hey, that's a good idea, we're at capacity. But they paused a lot, and they put effort into this the last couple months, and we're here today really based on their efforts. So I really want to thank those gentlemen. The second, Northstar Church. So I walked across the bridge, the same bridge that I took my wedding pictures on 14 years ago. This is a special, special place to me personally. Grew up, learned about Jesus here as a middle schooler, came to know Christ, was baptized, was married here. My wife was baptized here. Our boys and girls now have been dedicated here. My oldest son will be baptized in a couple days. This is a beautiful place to me, and to sit here again in this room where we gather every Sunday and have for a very long time it's incredibly emotional, and I'm grateful for that. I want to thank the table leaders. There's a group of men that raised their hands and said, look, I want to sit, I want to do something more, I want to help lead conversation and make this a comfortable experience for guys that are walking in. And so thank you, men, for that. And then honestly, everybody that decided to show up tonight. All of us are busy. We all have a ton going on, but you decided to take time out of your life and push pause and say, we want to come together as men and learn and get better, and it is incredibly meaningful and important to me. So wanted to start there. Some of y'all have heard the background of where we got here, so I just want to take a couple minutes. Some of you heard it twice. If this is the first time, there will be a first time for some of y'all. It's important. You may be thinking, all right, what does Eric have, like what credentials to be on stage? And the answer is nothing. I'm a dad. I'm passionate about being great, and I'm also passionate about creating community with guys in the same life stage as us. It's very, very important. A few years ago, I can think back to coming out of the most challenging season that I've walked through, and was actually on the top end. I was on the mountaintop, and I was looking back and really going through this exercise of reflection and being thankful, and I had this immense angst hit me. And the angst was around, I've got two brothers, one of which is here, some best friends in my life, and I didn't feel comfortable bringing them into that moment, and I pushed through, and it's by the grace of God that I'm here tonight, like talking to you in this setting. But I had this angst around, I felt this obligation to create community to ensure that if any of my friends or my brothers were going to go through something similar, that they had somebody that they could talk to and go through. Because for whatever reason, whether it was pride or whatever it was, I didn't feel that I had that. And so a few years ago, we started something in my basement with my little brothers, a couple of my best friends, a couple other men that have been really important in my life. And a couple years later, we sat, and I was just blown away with the community that was created, the things we were sharing, the relationships that I had seen. And I remember texting Mike saying, hey, we got to do something. You guys should do something about this. Like Northstar should do something. He's like, well, you should do something about this. And so we're here, but that's a little bit of the background. I think it's important to start also with some important statements that I want to share as we approach our time. For me, it's important. We're going to be about Jesus and about each other. That's why we're here today, is to get closer to Jesus, closer to each other. I really challenge you guys to be present. It's an hour a month, and you're going to get much more out of it if you can sit here and be present, which leads me to the other thing is be authentic, be real. You might think that something is not important to share, but if something's on your heart, it's important to somebody else. We're going through life, not for us, but for somebody else. And I'm not saying dump everything at the table first night, unless you feel called to do that. That might be a weird deal, but be real, be authentic, because somebody needs to hear your story. I'm passionate and I'm confident in that. And then be encouragers. Again, part of this group is community. It's encouraging one another. And then I'll close with this. So as we think about the goal, for me, it's very simply community. But the other thing, I think about the opportunity for ripples. I think about the opportunity that, look, I hope everybody is impacted and feels better walking out. But if just one guy walks in here and thinks about something differently and changes the way their approach with their wife or their kids, and it translates, the ripples of that we'll never know, but they will be immense. And so again, be present, be authentic, be real, because I think tonight's the start of something special. I can't tell you again how moved I am just to see this room full. It is beyond anything I can imagine. So thank you guys very much. I'd love to call up my good friend and mentor, Mike Lynch, to the stage, and we're going to have a quick conversation. So we started a little bit later today on purpose. What you can expect every month, we're going to have a conversation, and then we're going to break into tables because that's where the magic will be. But Mike, thank you, my friend.
Awesome. Would y'all give Eric a hand and thank him for his obedience to do this? So, Eric, I think it'd be important. Give everybody a little idea of your sort of tools of trade, what you spend. You don't spend your life on the Northstar campus. No. Tell them a little bit about you and your background and your story as far as what you do occupationally.
Yeah, so I work at Coca-Cola. I've been at Coke for 17 years, mostly in our food service division, so working with all of our customers that are pouring Coca-Cola, a far superior beverage than other options, and currently in the marketing space. But yeah, I've been there 17 years.
And I wanted to say that because I think it's important on a night like this that you understand this is about taking what we're all going to conceptually talk about and putting it in action in a corporate setting and in our homes. And I love what CA said earlier about what Mark said about being famous in our own home. It's one thing to be known everywhere else, but if we miss that part, we miss everything. So we've got a little guide for you. So look on the bottom of the little card. There's a QR code. Take that, scan it, and you'll have our notes for tonight. And it'll allow you to keep up, to log, to categorize all the stuff we talk about, because there is a tension that we all feel. And we did a whole series here last year on tensions, and we said this, if you want to type this in your notes, and we're going to dive in here. Tensions are not things to be solved. They're really just tensions to be managed. They're not problems to be solved. There's just some things in life that are tensions to be managed. And who I am versus what I say is a real tension. So, Eric, in the world that you live in, what's one of the biggest challenges you're facing as a dad, and how are you approaching that?
Yeah, I'll do a 2-for-1, get a little 2-for-1 special on the challenges. I think first, and this is probably similar for all y'all, I think it's this time, right? The reality that time, it feels like it's continuing to speed up. It's going faster and faster, whether that's real or not, is a massive anxiety. I think about, and it's a little morbid, but like as each day passes, we lose that day, or we gain the day, depending on how we show up, to influence our children. I mean, we have them for this little, as you know, as you and Ann being empty nesters now, right? So for me, I think, time is going fast as for me, as I've grown up, our commitments grow, but it's still a fixed amount of time, right? You think about the community or your work or friends, or the list goes on and on and on. That is also now stressing the amount of time that you have, right? And so to me, I think it's also the connected nature that we're living in. So, we can't ever turn it off, right? Our phones are always there. People can get you at any time of the day, and I think that also presses the time. So time to me is the number one thing. I think, to try to not just call out the challenges, but also think about a framework, or think about how at least I've thought about it to help. To me, guilt plays a massive role in trying to get through that, right? I think all of us have this thought of like, I should be doing something else, I should be better, I should be here or there. And I think for me, it's been really trying to get present with the fact that you can't, one of the things you've always said to me is I've never met a bad dad who's trying to be great. And I think we've got to quiet the guilt in order to be effective. Two other things is this A+ issue that I call it. Like, we all feel like you got to get an A+ in every aspect of your life. And the reality is that is pressure that is not real, and it's pressure that will crush you. There's going to be times where you got to be an A+ dad, and you might have to be C+ at work. Or you got to be an A+ husband and a C+ dad and C+ at work, or whatever it might be, whatever is important to you. But for us to think that the most important things in our life, you got to be A+ all the time, is not accurate. And again, it's pressure. And then the final thing I would say is I am obsessive about my calendar to the point where like Brittany makes fun of me about it. But I calendar one-on-one time with my kids every month, and I calendar time with Brittany every month, and then everything else, at least I know, like I have it locked in. And of course, I'm doing more than just a one-time with my kids, but at least that allows me to know in peace of mind that like I've got that locked in. So to me, Mike, time is the most, like the biggest thing that comes to my mind.
So I would love to hear from you guys. How many of you guys feel the pressure of like time is going quick and there's not enough time to do all I want to do? Raise your hand if that's you. It's funny. So there's a statement we use a lot at Northstar. I heard it from an old wise fella that I'm getting to become the old guy now. But anyway, so I heard him say this years ago, that which is most personal is most universal. Every guy sitting around your table feels the pinch of time. And can we all agree, time goes quick? Time goes quick. It's like you look down and time is moving. How many of y'all also say, because of the time constraints, I feel the guilt? Raise your hand. What's the guilt you feel? Who's somebody holler out something? What's the guilt you feel? When you feel the guilt, what is it? Say that again, Chris. Lack of intentionality with our kids. Feel guilty for resting. Yep. Anybody else? Here, yeah. You feel guilty for me time. It's so funny how universal these things are. Eric and I had a conversation recently. We were talking about anxiety, burnout. And I said, name a guy over 60 that experienced burnout. We couldn't name one. And you said the reason is they didn't have what?
Connected all the time.
This is a beautiful thing till it's not, right? You are accessible 24/7. And it is really hard. What they say, we average a couple thousand touches a day that we're swiping and opening our phone. That adds to that anxiety. Eric, as you sit there, what are some answers to this? From where you're at, what do you hope these guys get tonight? What would you say?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's healthy just to know that you've got, looking around, 100 plus guys that have showed up, because we're probably in a very similar spot.
Yep.
And acknowledging that we don't have the answers, but there's comfort, I think, in knowing you're not alone. So I think that's, to me, first and foremost, back to the community thing. But I also think that there is things that we'll learn from each other that we can embed into what we're doing day to day that maybe we didn't think about because someone is doing something and has shared that. And then also the ability just to grow our network, right? So to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey man, like, you said this, I'm struggling, can you help me? I just think we need to have that. I mean, that to me is the most important thing for tonight.
It's funny, this is not new. I want you guys to know this. This has been a struggle for years. It just comes and looks very different, And you even go back in Scripture and you go back to these foundational passages where God talks. So my kids are 29 and 26. They're gone. They're out of the house, and they are on their own and doing their deal and married and better than they've ever been. So it's great. But it is amazing because I feel like you. I was standing in the back of the room going, dude, I am really old, all right? And so because I feel like I'm you, I still feel like I'm 30. I still feel like I'm in the prime of my life, and I'm in a new prime, all right? But anyway, but I'm not in the prime of my life now. And you guys get the opportunity to do this right. That's the biggest thing tonight, is they get a chance to do it right.
Yeah. I'd love to kind of flip that around. So like as you think about when you were maybe at the age of the folks in this room, what were some struggles? What is something that comes to your mind?
So I would say this, and I was thinking about this a lot today. My number one fear, so for those of you guys that don't go to Northstar, so I pastor here. I've been here since I was 28. All right, I'm 54 now. So I've been here since I was 28. My biggest fear is my kids would grow up And I said this on a guy's podcast today that came out. My biggest fear is the kids would grow up and they would go, the dad you see on Sunday isn't who he is Monday to Saturday. And I lived with that fear. I lived with the fear that I would be a two-face. And I wouldn't be present. I would be accessible to everybody else, but not accessible to my kids. And that was the fear. And I'm telling you, it drove how I parented. Because I didn't want that to be my story. I'd seen that story played out. I didn't want it to be the story for my kids. I wanted them to love our family, love the Lord, and love the church. Those were our 3 goals for our kids.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. You want to get into the scripture?
Yeah. So tonight, I want everybody to look on the outline. Deuteronomy 4 and Deuteronomy 6, verse 4, is a foundational passage in the Old Testament. So Moses brings this to the Jewish people, and he says this, listen to this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Listen to what he says next. You should love the Lord your God with how much of your heart? What's it say there? All. Not some, not part. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. These commandments I give you today, they're to be on your hearts. So when Moses passes it on to the people, he goes, if there's one thing I want you to get this. You should love God with all you've got. So Dabo would say, you need to be all in. That's basically what Moses is saying there. Be all in with it. And then what he says next is this. Impress them, verse 7. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. And here's what Moses is saying. If there's one thing I want you to take, being all in with God is something you won't regret. Establishing a baseline for your family. And listen, I'm going to tell you guys something. The world we live in is moving the lines. The lines of life are very blurry. What's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, it's very blurry. Moses says, I'm going to define a line. I'm going to give you a foul line to go off of. Love God with all you've got. I want you guys to get this. The greatest gift you will give your spouse and the greatest gift you will give your children is a heart devoted to the Lord. Before you can do anything else, getting you right, and for some of us, listen, for some of us, our wives, 80% of Christian books are bought by ladies. And they gave them to you, and you haven't read them, all right? And so that's what happens, right? 80% of books, 80% of Christian music consumed by women. Just the way that it is. And we live in a world that's dying to see a man go, no, this is who I am, and this is what it's going to be about. And it's funny, Eric, this hit us sitting at breakfast, because we're sitting there with Steve Roach, and we're sort of breaking this apart, and it hit you. Unpack that a little bit. What struck you that day as far as this passage?
Yeah, so we were sitting a couple weeks ago thinking about really this conversation, and we were getting breakfast, and Mike and Steve called on talked about the verse. I took out my phone, and, like any good Christian, my Bible's in alphabetical order, so Mike thinks I can get there really fast. So I pulled up, and what I had highlighted was, as men, like we like to fix, things quickly. We like the manual. So what I had highlighted was all of the things to do, like impress them upon your children, talk about them daily, the back half of that verse. That's what was highlighted at some point last couple years. But what I missed was the front end, which is love God with all your heart, right? And so it hit us in this kind of like the tension really is we've got the opportunity to tell our kids in the moment, whatever we want to tell them, but that's going to wane if we're not living it. right? And so like the big aha for me was I've got to show up in this way where I am living for God, loving him with all that I have, and then my words will be amplified versus starting with the pep talk or starting with the correction, and they're not seeing that. To your point about being anxious about not being the person that, you say you are.
So why do you think we naturally go there? Why do you think we naturally, as men, go to, well, here's my game plan for my kids. Here's my game plan for my wife. Not going, all right, Lord, I got to get me right before I can lead right. What would you say?
I think it goes back to what I said. We want to fix things. We want to fix things quick. We want to take care of problems or make sure everything else is good. And I think the downside of that, I forget who said it, but feeling guilty for me time, like you need the oxygen. You have got to find time to ensure, like for me, like I've got to know, like spiritually, mentally, physically, there's buckets that have to be at least in an okay spot, or else I'm not going to be able to love on my family the way that I need to. But I think as men, we just want to go do those things, and we'll come second, but we got to make sure that we are in control.
It's so funny. I wear this bracelet on my arm. We gave it out at Northstar, and I'll bring them next month. And it just says, lock eyes with Jesus. Because it is so easy when our day begins to lock eyes with what? What do we lock eyes with when our day begins?
Phone.
Work?
Phone.
Instagram? Twitter? Or X? Whatever that is, all right? Threads, if that's going to make it. All right, whatever it is. But you're diving in, right? And it's funny. Whatever you go to first, listen to this, whatever you go to first shapes your day. If I go to Jesus first, he shapes my day. If I go to those things first, they shape my day. The thoughts shape my day. Or Zuckerberg and are they going to they're going to do a cage match. Is this really going to happen, right? And so Elon Musk is just, they're losing their minds. But it's those things. If we're going to love God with all we've got, that's how we've got to get this thing started.
Yeah, just to add on that, and then we can kind of wrap up and let the guys talk. I think we have to remember as we think about our legacy, it's earned every day. It's earned moment by moment, day by day, and we're going to fail, we're going to step back, but how do you stack up as many moments as you can, living the way that we're called to live? Because it's going to amplify the words that we say. But the reality is, like, that legacy is hard for us, Mike, because it's so far out. And we've got to fix today. And that's all right. But we got to your point, the tension is, how do you be present enough and mindful enough to stack up those wins and then stack them up over a period of time? And then you're looking back and you've got the memories that you have earned.
That's right.
I remember telling you at Mary Michael's wedding, like, you and Ann earned that. You earned these moments. It's not just you go to get to your child's wedding and say, hey, we got to have this day. No, you earned that. You earned that, and we have to earn that each and every day.
That's really good. So there's a phrase, and I'd love for you to thumb this in your phone. I heard John Maxwell say it, but I believe it applies to our spiritual lives. Compound consistency. Wise things done over a long period of time yield great results. You will not arrive there, but I'm going to tell you something. You're leaving a legacy, and a legacy is not what you leave behind. A legacy really is who you leave behind. Sarah, what's the danger if we aren't living what we're saying? What would you say?
Yeah, I think just really quick to wrap, I think the first thing is we talked about words, right? I've got a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and my twins are 3.5. I can tell my 3.5-year-old twins pretty much everything. It's just truth like that, But as they get older, you end up becoming not the smartest person in the room in their eyes. And so if you're not living this out, like they're watching. You got to live this out. You have to, again, you've got to live the man that you're telling them, that example. And the other thing that's going to be a real challenge for all of us, just based on where we sit today from a societal perspective, is they will look outside the house to the world to figure out what the answers are. What the world tells them a hero is when it's right in front of them. And so I think that to me is the real danger about not living this out.
Well, what we would love for you guys to do is spend some time at your tables. What are the things, who I am versus what I say? What are the struggles you deal with? Maybe some of you are like, dude, I ain't figured it out yet, but here's some lessons that I'm learning that God's teaching me. And let's take a couple minutes at your tables and you guys talk about it there, because I have a feeling some of the best insights are sitting right around you. So you guys talk about that at your table.